When I saw the Transcendence trailer, Sun and Snow, not only did my jaw drop because of how amazing the upcoming Snezhnaya characters look, but also because it seems that in my first video about Snezhnaya back in March 2023, I got quite a few things right both about the nation and the Tsaritsa. Like, I still don't believe it, to be completely honest. So today we will go over most things I said back then, and I'll add everything new we've learned since. I'm basically updating my Snezhnaya video, but first, this is a theory video and leaks are prohibited in the comment section. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update to the game itself. Well then, grab your stellar linchpin and let's get this video started. Let's start with the nation Snezhnaya. We all knew that it was gonna be completely frozen over, it's the land of cryo after all, and that winter all over Teyvat originates from Snezhnaya, although it's not like we've ever seen different seasons anywhere. We then learned that, just like the desert of Sumeru, the snow and cold are the result of the celestial nail that dropped on Hyperborea, destroying this golden kingdom and wiping out most of its people, while the survivors, those who weren't there at the moment, moved to what now is Hisi Island. The nail was struck because the people of Hyperborea, together with the angels and guided by the first angel Koitar and the apostle Soetervoinen, the Voyager, most likely the second descender in my opinion, rebelled against the heavens and even tried to build a tower that would have led them to the Garden of the Gods, which is most likely this structure that extends high up in the sky, meaning that this is probably what's left of Hyperborea. I'd say that it stands to reason to believe that the floating island of Celestia used to move around back then, since we have proof that it used to be above Salvindak near once, so maybe it also stayed above Hyperborea. Hence, it was the Garden of the Gods the humans tried to breach, and then when Nigeria created the Ascended People, it moved once more to deliver the curse on Fontaine and remained there where it still is today. Now, with the second teaser, we also saw a place in Snezhnaya that is not frozen, this verdant autumn forest with these trend-like monsters. My theory is that, just like any myth, there is some veracity behind the one regarding the Tsar's twin brother, the king of Midsommar Oak, and this might have been his place or it's where he died, especially considering that Tsaritsa spoke of a tomb and birch trees, although the trunks here are not white, as the Tsar's final token of affection for someone. If this is his final resting place, then maybe his lingering powers are what's shielding this forest from the eternal winter, but there might be an easier explanation. We learned that the Tsar came back from Hyperborea having learned something important, which may have something to do with Axinia, the infant he found in a time capsule in Hyperborea, and after he stayed in the birch forest deep in thoughts, he decided to open his doors to the Fae but also to the humans he had always kept at a distance to build a sacred chariot, and it became a place where the seeds of a grand illusion were sown. Maybe this forest is simply where the main Kriesnik's torch is located, and I said main because every city in Snezhnaya was built around one, so there are multiple torches, hence this place is warm enough to have melted the snow, and maybe Kriesnik is simply the Tsar's twin brother's name. When it comes to the new characters, we saw Vadinitsa, the prima soprano of the BLUESKY troupe. She's a Snowland Fae, a Siren, and she owns a normal Hydrovision. Then we saw Alosha, a mysterious hunter with a normal Electrovision, and he most likely actually fights aided by animals. He seems to be something like a mercenary, or he's a part of an organized group with Vadinitsa, but he's most likely not with the Fatui because he was stopped by our next character, one I'll drain my primogens to get, Valeri, a major of the Fatui whose star pupil, Onyx Agate, we met during the Trials of the Brave Warrior event. From the animation and color scheme, I'd be pretty surprised if he didn't have a cryo linchpin like Sandrone, and we saw him summoning a massive bear. Of course, it could simply be a metaphor to show the difference in strength between him and Alosha, or maybe fighting alongside animals is very common in Snezhnaya. When it comes to Adetta, she has a cryo linchpin and she's with the Fatui, but it's kinda weird because she was targeting the same guy Alosha was trying to take down, so I'm a little confused here. We've known Pulcinella since the Winter Night's last video, and you can't imagine how happy I was when Pantalone pronounced his name correctly.
I had the rare honor of being summoned before the Tsaritsa with Pulcinella to answer for myself.
But I'm adding him among the characters because, you know, every single characters we saw in the Travail video has become playable, Dainslev will be playable as well, so it should be obvious that our short old elf king is also gonna be playable, and technically speaking, I've been saving for him since I saw him the first time. When it comes to his element, I have no idea, but I'll tell you my hopes. Despite his colors point toward Electro, I hope it's Dendro, my favorite element. Though, since Cryo and Anemo are definitely not the only two elements that will have stellar reactions, maybe he will wield the still unknown third element that will be added later on. Since Dendro, Electro and Geo have lunar reactions with Hydro, maybe the third stellar element might actually be Pyro, but I can see him being Pyro, to be honest. Moving on, there's Vesna, a Snolan Fae, specifically a Vila, a member of the Družina, an organization that serves the Tsaritsa, and she owns an Anemo linchpin. Then there's Danica, the usual battle maid. I'm so bored of this trope, you can even imagine, but all things considered, is she even human? I mean, it's Snezhnaya and she goes around with literally just her pantyhose on? Also, color scheme screams Anemo linchpin to me. Next is Noich, and his design is just sick. He kinda looks like a vampire and he talks about the eons gone by, which makes me think he's one of the red flames Fae that, when the Tsaritsa took over Snezhnaya, replaced the blue flames that followed the Belgi Tsar, like the Lantern Fae, flames basically. Though with a war about to begin saying that this is a peaceful era, how bad was it back then? Lastly, there's Micha, who looks like a scholar/scientist and seems the current guardian of the Krisnik's torch. And I just noticed while editing that his clothes are acting like a hand, keeping the book open for him. Now, Micha does look like Misha from Stariel, as one of my viewers pointed out, but I just can't unsee Einstein from Honkai Impact 3rd, plus Micha has an atomic symbol on his chest, and guess who contributed, albeit indirectly, to the creation of the atomic bomb? Moving on to the Tsaritsa, Anastasia Fyodorovna Snezhnaya, this is where things get very interesting. 3 years ago, I proposed the idea that the Tsaritsa's story was gonna be based off the Romanov family, so the Tsaritsa was Alex of Hesse, Alexandra Fyodorovna Romanova, and since she turned cold and detached because something that happened to her during the Cataclysm, but also considering that Piero became her right hand, to which she gave full authority just like Alexandra gave it to Rasputin, the Tsaritsa in Genshin Impact probably had a child, a daughter named Anastasia that in some form or shape went missing just like it was believed for the real Anastasia Romanova. Since the Cataclysm was the reason why the Tsaritsa completely changed, I also thought that maybe the father of this child was Kanrian, making Anastasia half Kanrian, hence she was transformed into a Hilicher just like Karibe. So Anastasia would have been dead more than missing. The Tsaritsa then might have saved or caught her daughter turned Hilicher, keeping her safe somewhere in Snezhnaya. Piero, the Genshin Impact version of Rasputin, convinced her that he knew how to save her daughter, so she began gathering the Gnosis, waging war against the whole world, but above all against the Heavenly Principle, so that once defeated, the curse would have been lifted and Anastasia would have been turned back into a human. As it turned out, it seems that I somehow got most of it right. The Tsaritsa ended up being a mix of Alexandra Fyodorovna and Anastasia Romanova. Her story is probably still inspired by Alexandra's, but they went for a more known name, considering there's a whole Disney animated movie and countless other movies about Anastasia, a name that can also be shortened to Anna, as in Anna Shariak, the Herrscher of Ice. The Tsaritsa doesn't have a daughter but a son, and I guess his name might end up being Alexei, Alexandra's son's name, or maybe Alex, her real name if they want to twist things around. Anyway, the kid very interestingly has the characteristic Karian diamond eyes, which means that his father was indeed from Karia, and as a consequence, the chances of him having turned into a villager are through the roof. As for her husband, he's probably someone we've never heard of before. I'm certainly hoping with my whole soul that it's not Ermin, since I can't shake this omen off my head, or maybe it's someone from the Alberich clan, because if you think about it, we know Kaya is Kanria's last hope, but we've never really learned why he is. So who knows, maybe he's unknowingly the Tsaritsa's brother-in-law or something along the line, and he'll be thrown into Project Stuzha mixed with Project New Karia to bring back the destroyed nation and lift the curse. Though this also makes me think, what if the Tsaritsa's kid was transformed but also died, or even worse, the Tsaritsa eliminated a villager and then realized it was her son? In that case, turning New Karia into reality would potentially bring her son back to life, but would it really be him? He would technically be a copy of his son, a clone created through the memories of Karia, but not really her actual son, because at the end of the day, New Karia is just a reconstruction of something that was destroyed and of the people that had long been dead. You might be wondering why I'm bringing New Karia into this topic, and that's because I've always believed that Pyro has been secretly working with the Abyss Order, which would make sense. I mean, every survivor of Karia would want their nation to be saved, right? Well, except for Dainslev. He really wants Karia to stay dead for some secret reason he's not gonna tell us anytime soon. Moving on, we need to talk about a certain missing Gnosis. As we said before, the Tsaritsa is gathering the Gnosis and she currently has 6 of them, with the Pyro one's location being unknown. My theory is that it simply went back inside the Traveler for 4 reasons. First, since the play is Either, he said that the Gnosis doesn't feel like anything special, so maybe whether it's inside of him makes no difference. Second, he became the latest owner of the Gnosis the moment he absorbed it, and since it's supposed to be inside its owner, it would have gone back to the Traveler, not Mawika. Third, the Gnosis are the third Descender's remains, so it would make sense that they would go back to another Descender. But above all, we know they are somehow related to the powers of the Dragon Sovereigns, since Neuvillette received the Hydra Gnosis when Fossilor gave him his full authority back, and the Traveler was also recognized by the mechanisms of the Eternal and Frost Moon as Chukwatl, so the Gnosis might have chosen a Descender that feels like the Phlogiston Dragon. Lastly, the Gnosis have never been said to be a one-time use thing. If anything, we have proof of the opposite, since Rukkhadevata used the Dendrognosis to power the Akasha system for millennia, Scaramouche used the Electrognosis to power the Arcane God, and then Nahida used both of them to retrieve Rukkhadevata's last memories. Now, when the Pyro Gnosis ignited and burned Ermin's soul, it obviously wasn't destroyed, both because it would invalidate the Tsaritsa's plan out of nowhere after 6 years of the game, but also because, as we said before, it just doesn't make much sense now, does it? Since it wasn't on the chessboard, it also means that Pantalone didn't look for it among Ermin's soul's ashes to bring it back. He wasn't in Sumeru as a harbinger on the Tsaritsa's orders, he was there for personal reasons, to keep his promise to Dottore, and he doesn't strike me as one who would go above and beyond on his own accord to look for something he really couldn't care less about. If the Gnosis went back to the Traveler, then the story would make complete sense. The Tsaritsa can't start Project Stuzha if she doesn't have all 7 Gnosis, reason why the people are growing restless and are opposing this project, so she has to wait for us to go to Snezhnaya, giving us the time to play the summer event. This would also open up to various possibilities for the Tsaritsa to acquire the last Gnosis. She could convince the Traveler to give it to her, she could go Signora style and punch it out of him, or she could, affect Paimon's health, kidnap her and use her as leverage to exchange for the Pyro Gnosis the Traveler doesn't even know he has. That is, unless the traveler has become the Pyro Gnosis himself. Now, to try and figure out why the Tsaritsa even needs the Gnosis to begin with, we need to straighten out a few details first. Let's begin by ruling out once and for all the idea that the Tsaritsa's husband or lover was the third descender. It just makes absolutely no sense. Saarelainen asked Pakaisuko for his daughter's hand. Pakaisuko told him to go to Pohjola or he would have punished his daughter instead. The third descender had no choice, he committed this transgression and the Heavenly Principles turned him into the Seven Gnosis. The Tsaritsa, on the other hand, had a kid with her man, and one wouldn't really ask for someone's hand if they already had a son. You know, they'd be way past that. Besides, the kid has Kanrian eyes, while the descenders come from beyond the fake sky, so it was most definitely not from Kanria. With this out of the way, it seems unlikely that she wants to bring the third descender back to life, and that's ignoring the fact that apart from Natlan, which has its own rules, the dead cannot come back to life, especially a descender that doesn't even belong to Teyvat and isn't recognized by Irminsul. We should also keep in mind that while we absolutely believe that the Heavenly Principles eliminated the third descender and turned his remains into the Gnosis, we technically can't be that sure that he didn't agree to this for some unknown reason, and if he did agree, it would explain the usurper and the one who came after created the Gnosis together. Since we're at it, let's clear something here as well. Many people think that the Heavenly Principles work with the second descender to turn the third descender into the Gnosis, but for that to be right, it should have said the one that came after. Instead, it says one that came after, which means any of the descenders that came after the first one. Excluding the fourth for obvious reasons, considering that the second descender is most likely the Voyager, who incited a rebellion against the Heavenly Principles and was defeated before Nibelung came back, so before the Heavenly Principles fought the War of Funerary Flame, Neuvillette was obviously talking about the third descender. Now, the Gnosis were created to subdue and control the resentments and loathing of the world, which means that they were created specifically to prevent the Dragon Sovereigns to use their full authorities now that the Heavenly Principles' functions were ruined by Nibelung's War of Funerary Flame. This could mean that the third descender might have acquired or stolen the authorities of the dragons, much like the traveler acquires the memories and, as a consequence, the powers of the archons from the statues of the Seven, which are most likely sculpted Irminsul roots, and then he was turned into the Gnosis to lock these authorities once and for all, but that's not really important right now. What we do care about is what the Tsaritsa needs the Gnosis for. Well, it's clear that she doesn't care about the power contained within the Gnosis, since she still took the Hydro Gnosis despite the Water Authority having been released, so she only needs the casings, the actual remains of the third descender, which means that she might be trying to acquire whatever makes an alien at the center, since it's the only entity that can actually rival the Heavenly Principles. We also know that they are essential for Project Stuja, Project Freezing Cold, and the teaser might have shown us what is supposed to happen in the future. The Kresnik's torch is gonna stop working, Snezhnograd or maybe the entirety of Snezhnaya will be evacuated since there's no one inside here, and everything will be completely frozen over. What's the point of doing that? I have absolutely no idea. I mean, at first glance it doesn't really make sense to freeze your own country, but there's obviously a reason behind all of this. Maybe it has something to do with the ice dragon that may or may not be there. Maybe it's slumbering beneath Snezhnograd and it can be awakened if the conditions are right, like freezing cold since it's the ice dragon we're talking about, and a Dragon Sovereign would be perfect in a fight against the Heavenly Principles. Another possibility though is that the torches are inevitably going to run out of power since Child spoke of the time Snezhnaya has left, so Project Stuja's goal may actually be to find a way to somehow bring warmth to Snezhnaya once that happens. We also know that the Tsaritsa acquired a considerably large amount of Kuvaki from Colombina, which she'll probably use with the Experimental Bureau. It was built on the largest fragment of the Eternal Moon, a place we're still waiting to explore by the way, and the Bureau does look like a man-made moon, so she might be attempting what Nibelung did during the War of Funerary Flame, especially after Columbina told us it is a weapon that will play a key role in the Tsaritsa's plan. Two other important details we saw are the Tsaritsa interacting with Renova holding a very peculiar staff, and the Tsaritsa playing chess with Rhine-Daughter, and no, I don't think she's the 10th Harbinger. I mean, you have the Shade of Life as a Harbinger as she's only one rank higher than Child? Really? Anyway, when I watched the teaser, it sounded like the Tsaritsa wasn't really treating Renova as an enemy, but more like a weapon the Heavenly Principles used against humanity but also against her own will. She is responsible for whatever happened to Kanria and to the Tsaritsa's family, but she had no choice, it was an order she couldn't defy. I've also always believed that Renova has been secretly defying the Heavenly Principles on every occasion. She turned Xbalanque into an Archon, created a Night Kingdom to save Natlan, wrote new rules for it on Xbalanque's request, and she was harshly reprimanded for it because she shouldn't have done that. She also accepted Capitano's sacrifice instead of Mawika's, even though she had no apparent reason to wait for him to arrive or to deal with him at all. She rules over death. If she wanted to, she could have taken Mawika's life and that would have been it. She had no obligation whatsoever toward Mawika, Yokwaltekutin or Capitano. Instead, she was quote-unquote forced to accept Capitano's sacrifice. She chose to create a paradox that would cause issues down the line, because no matter what you think, she still granted death to Capitano without lifting the curse, so he's basically both dead and alive, hence the paradox. And she used the fact that she can't lift the curse, because she can't defy the Heavenly Principles, as an excuse, but the whole thing sounded like it was exactly what she wanted. This makes me think that the whole speech in God's Limits was just an act to show that they're faithful to the Heavenly Principles, reason why Naberius couldn't allow Rhine-Daughter to say weird stuff, but also to justify the fact that they will have to act on their own accord since they're not receiving orders from the Heavenly Principles, because they're still asleep and they wouldn't dare disturb their beauty sleep, oh no. What's even more important is something I was made notice by my viewers. The staff that Tsaritsa is holding has Istaroth's halo and Naberius' white cubes, so what we saw was most likely her asking Renova for her powers as well, and then she would have found a way to meet Asmodee right after. Maybe there will be a fake battle in which Renova will lose, who knows, but it's safe to say that the Tsaritsa is going to use the laws of Teyvat against the Heavenly Principles. What about Kuvaki then? Well, last chapter of the video. Snezhnaya is introducing yet another kind of vision, the stellar linchpins. Their powers come from beyond the fake sky and derive from the third descender and the pale star. What is a pale star though? Maybe a sun that has become a dim white dwarf by any chance? You know, like the one that originally shone above Teyvat before the fake sky was created? If that's true, then much like Notcry worships the true moon instead of the fake moon in the sky, the rest of Snezhnaya would be the land that worships the true sun of Teyvat rather than the morning star, what I think is the fake sun created by the Heavenly Principles, which is this sun that we can see from the moon, but interestingly also this sphere that circles Teyvat as represented by this device. We could say that just like the moon wheels were created by the first descender and the moon goddesses, the stellar linchpins might have been created by the third descender and Teyvat's sun? Or maybe it just uses the power of the sun. Or maybe they were created along with the Gnosis by the first and the third descenders together, because the linchpins still use the elements of the human realm, something they probably wouldn't be able to do if the Heavenly Principles weren't involved. As for fixing in place the impurities of the third descender, I'll be completely honest, I have no idea what that could even mean. The Kuvaki that the Tsaritsa acquired from Columbina instead might be used to rip the border apart, letting the pale star shine over the planet once again. I'm expecting something like what we see in the last challenges of the Imaginarian Theater basically, the sky being slashed with the power of the Light Realm, most likely using the Experimental Bureau just like the Frost Moon can fire high energy blasts. Basically, the Tsaritsa will probably use the powers of both the moon and the sun to free Teyvat from the shackles of the Heavenly Principles. We do have a question we still can't answer though. Is the Tsaritsa aware of what it would mean to show Teyvat's location to the rest of the universe? The Heavenly Principles seem to have arrived on Teyvat exactly because they intercepted the message sent out by Project Moongazer, so that's proof enough to show that revealing Teyvat's location isn't exactly the brightest idea ever, especially with the Abyss actively looking for a way to invade from space all the time. Alas, it is too early to figure this out, so as always, we can only wait and see. And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact Theory videos, consider subscribing. My next video will be about what we learned on the Frost Moon, because there are some revelations that kinda point towards some of my theories being potentially correct, and I also want to rewrite a short recap of the chronology of the history of Teyvat before Snezhnaya is released, so be ready for it. Well then, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.